The moment the funeral director looked at me and said, "We'll need your mother's consent," my stomach dropped. Because even in my father's final hours, she still had power over him and over me, and I knew exactly what she would do with it before I tell you how this ends. Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone hurt the people you love for years, hide behind a perfect public image, and never face consequences? Because this is one of those stories, and if you've ever wished karma would hurry up, go ahead and subscribe, and settle in, because this is the kind of justice that doesn't come with handcuffs. It comes with truth. My dad died on the 1st of December 2022 after more than 15 years of chronic illness that slowly stole his strength, his mobility, and eventually his independence. And as his body weakened, the house he worked himself nearly to death to pay for became a cage. Not because of the illness alone, but because of the woman he was married to, my mother, who had never been warm, never been nurturing. And as the years passed, became something far worse. Someone who treated my father's disability like an inconvenience she could exploit. I remember visiting and seeing the way he'd hesitate before asking her for help, the way his voice would drop when he needed something as simple as food or a ride to an appointment, because every request came with a sigh, an eye roll, or a reminder of how much he was burdening her. And behind his back, she told anyone who would listen that they were separated, basically divorced, that she was talking to other men online, that she was just waiting to leave and marry someone else, all while living under the roof he paid for and draining his finances like it was her right. We tried everything: police reports, legal advice, welfare checks. But every door slammed shut with the same answer: it's a civil matter. And I can't describe the rage of realizing that abuse doesn't always leave ease, and when it doesn't, the system shrugs and walks away. Eventually, my dad made me durable power of attorney and added me to his accounts, not because he wanted to burden me, but because he was scared. Scared of what would happen to him if he lost what little control he had left. And I begged him to come live with me, told him I could take care of him, that he didn't have to stay there. But he couldn't leave the house he worked his whole life to pay for, because to him, leaving felt like admitting defeat. Then Thanksgiving came, and the decline was fast and brutal. And the day after, I brought him to my home on hospice. And for the first time in years, he relaxed. Like his body finally understood it was safe. And I did everything I could to make his last days good. His favorite music, playing softly his favorite foods when he could still eat, sitting by his bed holding his hand while he slept, memorizing the weight of it, the warmth, knowing every second was numbered. When he passed, I was numb but determined to honor his wishes. And that's when the funeral home told me they needed my mother's consent to cremate him. And of course she said no. At first, because denying him dignity was just one more way to assert control. And she only agreed after I allowed her to keep the Social Security survivor benefits, something that would have been hers anyway. But she needed the performance, needed to feel like she'd won. So I wrote the obituary, and with every word, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: clarity. And I made a choice that would change everything. I did not include her. Not as a wife, not as a widow, not as anything. There was no mention of a marriage, no acknowledgement of a spouse, just my father, his life, his struggles, and the people who actually loved him, because I refused to help her play the grieving widow when she'd spent their marriage draining him emotionally, financially, and physically. When it went public, the fallout was immediate. Phones buzzing, messages pouring in, confused friends and distant relatives asking why my mother wasn't mentioned. And that's when she exploded, because narcissists don't fear consequences. They fear exposure. And suddenly the carefully crafted victim image she'd spent years building was cracking. People asked me directly what happened, and after years of therapy unpacking maternal narcissistic abuse, I realized something powerful. Silence had only protected her. And if she didn't want people to know the truth, she shouldn't have lived it. So I told them calmly, honestly, without exaggeration, about the neglect, the financial exploitation, the emotional abuse, the way she leveraged his illness to control him. And every conversation felt like another brick being pulled from the wall she'd hidden behind. The climax came not with shouting, not with a confrontation, but with the quiet realization that she no longer controlled the narrative, that people saw her not as a grieving widow, but as what she was, and the relief was almost physical, like a weight lifting from my chest, because for the first time, my dad's story wasn't being rewritten by the person who hurt him most. Maybe in her version, I'm the villain, the ungrateful child who aired dirty laundry, but in reality, all I did was refuse to lie. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat, because sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. It's about truth finally being louder than manipulation. And if this story hit something deep in you, hit like, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me, was this justice or was it too far? And subscribe for more stories where the truth finally gets its moment.